But everyone I've spoken to is helpless. Every politician, every decision maker I've met, they're all part of this massive system. And that system has momentum. And they cannot problem solve around it. Any action that they might take to change things, or actually put some genuine solutions on the ground, has the actual outcome of destroying their careers. And that's at all levels of the system.
Mm-hmm.
You think of it. You, let's say you're an executive on the executive board of, say, a large corporation, and you present to them the concept of peak oil. What do?
Yep.
And then you point out, says, well, the nature of money is actually one of the serious problems. We can't use money anymore. We can't use energy anymore. One of the implications is the just-in-time supply grid across the planet is about to become unreliable and subject to monkey business and a geopolitical front. And then everyone else around the table says, okay, you might be correct, but we're going to throw you out of the room now.
Oh, my gosh.
That's the situation they find themselves in. What they're hoping is everyone around the table collectively are all coming to the same conclusions at the same time, which is sort of what's happening now. These ideas are actually taking root and they're spreading like wildfire. And so now what we're all hoping is, instead of actually sort of having a tense discussion about, like, should we throw them out of the room or not, it's, okay, these are the challenges we're facing. We just don't know what to do. And that's kind of where most of the people I'm talking to now are at. They just don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't. And so when I say, like, it's become apparent what needs to happen, is I can't rely on any of those people. Right? And so the entire Western world is so enamored with the current system that so the path going forward, for example, is I have two fronts. One is everyone at all levels of our society, in all directions, in all sectors, get our arms around the network of problems we've got in front of us, the challenges. We don't have to agree, but become educators so we can at least debate and be aware of what has to happen, right? And the second thing that has to happen is there are solution vectors. Some of them are social. The most important ones are social, right? But we've got to take these ideas and turn them into outcomes. And so what we now need is a whole lot of groups popping up all over the world. You know, like what Doon is actually running in northern New South Wales could be one of those groups, where you have a group of people who come together for a reason to innovate or to develop a series of ideas. Right? And those are, they're popping up all over the world. There's lots of concept innovation hubs popping up all over, and everyone's got a paradigm they're working towards. So then what has to happen is those innovation hubs then have to then collaborate with each other and tell each other what they've learned. Some will be about food production. Some will be about manufacture. Some will be about medicine. Some will be about education. Some of them will be about like social systems, like how do we live? What's our relationship with the environment? What I'm actually going for now is a new energy / technology / commodity sourcing system based on what I've seen so far. And these ideas are seriously threatening to the people around me. Not the people around me, sorry, but the broad brush interest groups. And I know they're watching me. Well, I sort of say that, for example, the UN's just released a new report on a life cycle assessment of renewable technology, and that they're starting to say things out loud that are real. These guys will not acknowledge that my work exists, but I know they're all watching my work very carefully, and I'm still getting high-level support from somewhere. Right, so it's like I'm operating outside of the system, if you will. And while I'm allowed to do this for whatever reason, I'm going to be as effective as I can. And that's why I'm sort of trying to be as productive as I can, because this window may not it may not always be this way. So anyway, so I'm actually going to go outside the Western world, form an innovation hub, found a small city, and put a whole series of unorthodox ideas together. My work will now merge with the Venus Project, in Florida, USA, and their work's going to evolve and my work's going to evolve, and together we'll develop something new. And I'm then going to go into a funding drive, getting where the Venus Project can take donations now through their website, but we're about to launch it properly. In fact, I actually have a hard stop at 5 o'clock, which is in 45 minutes. And the reason I have that is because I've got a workshop with the Venus Project people to actually develop what we're doing. So this is real. Yeah. So perhaps I should stand down now and hand you the reins.
Oh, so wait, 5 minutes? I thought it would be 50 minutes.
45 minutes.
45 minutes. Okay, 45 minutes. Yeah, I actually had a question from Interim Humanity. Is the Venus Project doing something new, and is Michaux going there for good?
So yes, they are doing something new. We are actually developing a new concept, and that concept is an evolution of the Venus Project powered by an unconventional energy source operating to new resources management paradigm is now proposed. The plan will have elements of circular economy, steady state economy, permaculture, regenerative agriculture, degrowth, and the Venus Project. And they're all going to merge into line with my work and the work of Harold Sverdrup. Right, and so we're taking bits from everywhere, and we're now putting something new on the ground. And I can show you some of those things today if we've got time.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So just to make it clear, are you moving to Florida then?
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm in Helsinki. What we actually want to see happen is that Florida's where the Venus Project is now, and that's going to be like the central hub. I'm going to build what I call a gateway city.
Okay.
There's several targets around the world. There's 5 or 6 of them. There is one preferred site. They're all outside the Western world.
Okay.
And when we actually the first part is we're going to ask for donations to get us going. More donations come in, and then I can actually leave my job and actually go and raise capital. I need to raise between $3 and $5 billion US to build this city. That's what it takes to build something like this. That is actually not unreasonable, right? But we just need to actually have the money for flights and accommodation for me and 2 other people to get together. There's a group of 20 people around us. We're scattered all over the world. Once we get to the point where we are funded, we can start looking at scoping studies. People from all over the world will congregate together and we'll go through the feasibility shoot of scoping study, pre-feas, feasibility, and so on, to the point where construction and tender. And that's actually my professional world coming in. Once we actually get to the point where something's going to happen, what we believe will happen is we will be swamped by people who are saying, right, here's my land, I'm independently wealthy, here's some money, and we want you to set up another city in this one. So we'll have like a network of cities that will evolve. And it will all be managed, as in, not managed, but organized, if you will, around the Florida site. So the Florida site in its current form needs to evolve. We need to, more resources need to be put into it. More people need to be there. We want to build a conference center, an archive for the arts. There's a whole lot of stuff that we're looking at. And so I'm going to stay in Helsinki for now, in Finland, but then things will probably move. And when they move, I'll be traveling all over the world. But when we've actually got a site to go to, and probably start with, say, 50 to 100 people, and we'll start out like a mining operation. As we build the city, if there's a place to move to, my wife and I will move there. And at this stage, I hope it's South America.
Oh, okay. South America. Yeah. Well, I had a related question. Where is the preferred location for Puerto Arantas?
Okay, that's actually a site in Peru.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we're negotiating a lease with the landowners, but that lease is actually not there yet, so we can't. I shouldn't have really let that name out.
Okay, sorry.
Well, I've already done it. I didn't realize when I presented it to Chris Martinson, but it's we're negotiating the lease, and the landowners have to be sort of happy and involved and partners, NDAs are signed, MOUs are signed, all that sort of stuff, but it ain't over till we've got that lease. And so preliminary designs are on the floor now, and we're actually in a little bit. I'll be talking to the Venus Project people directly, and we're going to start developing the media package where we can actually talk about how we're going to do this and release it. There's lots of ideas around, and lots of people have great ideas. We've got to include them all and sort of have a discussion amongst us about what's the best combination. And it can't all be done by one person, right? So we've got to sort of assign tasks. That's all in progress. So what I'm sort of saying is the Venus Project's been talking for a long time about doing stuff. We're now going to have a serious red hot go to actually put some results on the ground. And that'll be in the form of a city of 10,000 people built in stages. And at its heart is there'll be a research institute with 2,000 people, scientists, engineers, technicians, and support staff. And that research group will be broken up about 40 to 50 research groups. So, yeah, you're in Brazil at the moment, mate.
Yeah, well, this is South America. Yeah, but here's Peru. Yeah.
So we're going to land on a place and a patch of land that there's not developed at the moment, and we're going to do it in a way where we're not in competition with resources of any kind with the locals. And we want to open source some ideas to help the locals to make their society better. And doing so, the locals will see us as a net positive.
That's a good strategy. Yeah, and so I would think that here where the rainfall is better would be good, but I don't know if you guys are planning on, because I know some parts of Peru is very dry.
We're in the desert. We're in the dry.
You're in the desert. Oh, okay. Okay, I see.
Yeah. But that while no one else wants to touch that with a barge pole, that's actually a solution, right? For example, what we do is we land a thorium reactor in the desert. We take seawater from the coast, we're around the coast, take seawater, turn it into steam. The heat from the reactor turns it into steam. Use that steam to generate electricity. That steam then cools and condenses, and then we'll put it in a reservoir. And as it cools, we can then irrigate that area and green the desert. And that's our fresh water, and that's our drinking water. The brine and salt, it gets better. The brine and salt, we'll have it irrigating downhill towards the coast. And on the way, we will strip all metal elements out of the sea salt. When we get to the bottom, we will be taking the sodium, salt is sodium iodine, take out the sodium, which we will make batteries out of. Right. And the iodine that's left, we will then take it back to the city to help treat the black water circuit, the sewerage.
Okay. Yeah.
This is going to be a desert technology city, and water is very, very scarce. We have to treat it as such. So the sewerage then has to be treated in a way where we can use it in agriculture, but we can also use it safely. So we've got to actually take the bacteria load out of the sewage, and iodine is actually one of the chemicals that's actually useful for that. And so what's left, but there's a tiny, tiny bit of residue left. We put that on a ship. We take it far out to sea, where the strips, and we return it to the sea in a way where it can disperse over a wide range very quickly. Right. So the fact that it's desert is actually not something that stops me at all. And this is using the principles of the circular economy.
Okay. Yeah.
Waste products are actually feedstock for something else. It's like industrial systems in a cluster, and everything works like an organic farm, where the outputs of one operation are an input to another.
I'm not sure what the soil there is, but I do know that there are obviously things you can grow in the desert, and you could grow a permaculture food forest in the desert. With like pomegranates and cactus pears and mesquite and wattle. Yeah. So
there's no water there. Like there's about 60 millimeters a year. So there's bugger all water. GTK at the moment, the geological survey that I work for, one of their jobs is actually rehabilitating land that's been sterilized from industrial agriculture. And part of that is getting the mineral balance right, and then getting the organic humus level to a more acceptable level. So that's what we're doing. If we've got a regular water source, we're going to green the desert. Yes, we want to grow food. Yes, we're looking at permaculture. Yes, we're looking at things like hydrogeology. I'm going to get the Peruvian Geological Survey and the and GTK to map the shit out of this area. We want to know what's above the ground, below the ground, out to sea. We want to know it all. What's the water table doing? What happens every 20 years with these flash floods that happen in the region? What happens there?
Oh, yeah. With those flash floods, I know very important is to set up swales before the flash floods, because those are a very important source of water in the region, and you want to contain as much of that water without it running off.
So part of the operation is to terraform the site. I'm going to go all mining engineer and just do a shitload of drill and blast to level. There's lots of, it's a very hilly terrain. Knock the tops off hills and fill valleys. Once we understand the watershed and where water's going, to terraform the space into a series of terraces and steps, but also have places where water can actually go, and we can catch lots of water. Yes, swales are part of it, but we're also going to terraform whole valleys. And this is actually what happens in an open cut mine when we dig a open pit. We drill and blast a lot of rock. Yeah, Ivor, talk to me.
Yeah. You got on mute, Ivor.
Did. Yeah, okay. I just talked to a guy by the name of Daniel Sandweiss, and he's at the University of Maine Climate Change Institute, and he's also an archaeologist and anthropologist, and he has been working with the people in that whole area of Peru, which is the that arid coast of Peru, which was the Nazca culture, and he has a very detailed study of how El Niños have affected that area. And, the El Niños way back to, 4,000 years ago, the El Niños have periodically affected that area. And they had a very complicated system of irrigation and stuff in that area coming up from the Andes Mountains. So if you talk to him, he is really an interesting character.
We are actually in contact with the people in the area who are doing that. In fact, I've had to move my city more than once because we found that that's actually some archaeological ruins happen to be right where I wanted to put my metal smelters. They said, all right, we'll move it. Dune.
Wow. You got on mute, Dune. You're muted. Okay, there you go. Okay.
Simon, you might have heard of Jeff Lawton, who's a permaculture king. He's been doing greening of the desert in Jordan. So a lot of the work that he would have done there would probably be applicable in such an area. Yeah.
So there's about 20 people around me, and we are talking to people who green deserts, and we found the most useful are the Chinese because they stole them from everyone else. Right, and so they're like they've done a literature search on what works. But yes, Jeff Lawton's name has come up. So, but we are greening the desert, but it's actually part of a larger system. Right, so yes, we've got to reinvent agriculture where we're not allowed to use petrochemical fertilizers or GMOs. Yes, we're going to manage the hydrogeology, both real time but also across decades. We're trying to create a situation where everything that we need will eventually come from the sea in a way where we're not vulnerable to local weather patterns. If we can do that over time, like it'll take time to do, it'll take 10, 20 years, whatever. These things will happen in stages. The energy stuff will happen pretty quick because a lot of it's already done.
Right, like the molten salt reactors.
That's
and
one
then
of them. Turns out there's two. Yeah, but yes,
Okay.
if we get around to it, I've got a list of who's actually developing thorium technology at the moment. But that's actually an easy solution if I can actually get one on the land. That's going to be the trick. The second one is actually about burning or oxidizing iron powder for heat.
Oh, okay.
So, anyway, so if we are talking to like a whole group of people on three basic fronts. There's the industrial stuff, There's the new relationship with the environment front, and there's a new social contract front. And because of what's involved, the energy and stuff is relatively easy in comparison, because a lot of it's already done. We just need to assemble the bits together. Whereas the environmental biosystems agriculture front, that'll take years to do, because we've got to prepare the land. We've got to prepare the land first. So that has to come together second. And the social contract stuff, everyone who's actually done this before has failed. So we've got a game theory lab to set up to actually examine why that is, and have a discussion with the relevant people over a period of time, so we can actually sort of morph into a society. And we'll start out as a private company, like a mine, where everyone's there with a job to do. They get paid. We're going to trial a new concept of money. So instead of actually going straight to the moneyless society, we'll do it in stages where we
use a local currency.
So no, we'll accept all of it. Right. So we're going to change the nature of money and change the rules on everything. Right. So if we actually, what do you need money for? See, 500 years ago, what do we need money for? And so most people, for example, did got what they needed from the land themselves, and money was used only every now and then for some purchases. But now we need money for everything. So if we can actually get to the point where we move away from that, and if we say, well, the people who are living in the city, right, if we're going to set this up as a hub, and we're going to nowhere, we'll do a thing where we build and construct all the land, all the buildings, all the systems, and that's owned by the same entity. People who come to work there, they get assigned a house. Here's a house. Things like electricity, water, sewerage, education, medical services, all that stuff is free, as in it's complementary of actually being there. Oh, food too. We're going to be importing food until we can actually start to grow our own. And eventually, actually, when we actually do start growing our own stuff, we want to be able to grow hemp and bamboo as well as food. I'm going to set up a hemp cycle, and we'll start making stuff out of hemp. And where we're going is actually able to do that. Whereas in terms of legislation in the Western world, that gets rough. So
yeah.
Anyway, so back to money. So if we get to the point where we are managing our resources with some kind of crypto/blockchain technology, where we can manage how many people we've got in the city, what are their actual needs, what have we got to work with, and we, in dynamic equilibrium context, we manage all that so we never actually get a shortage. And so we have this system that is transparent and auditable by everyone. What happens and what goes where and what happens next. Right. And so then we go to the point, well, this is what we're going to do. And so that is actually the first tier in a two-tier system. Everything we need is managed. The second tier is a conventional wage. We need a way of actually sort of people can come there and work and live, but not compromise their career. They can interact with the rest of the world, and they don't have to risk anything by joining. Right, so they'll get like a second tier as a wage, and that'll be in whatever currency they want. We'll be accepting cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. If you want to get paid in Bitcoin, we'll do it. It's also going to be cool where it's actually possible for us to be extracting gold from the local countryside in these really, really small, high-grade deposits. So I want to get in the position where I can pay my staff in gold bullion if they want.
Wow, that would be serious. Yeah.
Anyway, so whatever people want, and so be whatever currency that we're going to get hold of. Is it the US dollar still? Is it the Puerto Rican? Is it the Peruvian currency? Is it whatever. So people can come. I can employ someone. They can move there. They can work there. They can bring their families. Eventually, we want family-friendly environment where they can actually store wealth. They're not compromising anything themselves, and they can interact with the rest of the world anytime they want, just like anyone else. But we're now changing the nature of what money is needed for. They don't need that money to live in the city, because everything else is provided, from transport all the way up to medical services. And so we'll start out as a company, but somewhere along the way, probably when children hit the ground, and so we start needing daycare centers and postnatal care and all that. That's when we're going to start thinking about, well, now we need to morph into a democratically run city. How do we do that? And that's still, there's ideas on the ground, but we're still sort of, playing with that.
So,
anyway.
Yeah. Could you tell us about your trip to Copenhagen, about the thorium?
Right,
What?
I can do that. So let me
You wanted to share? Okay, go ahead.
So I'm going to, what I'm sharing here is, get back to Jitsi, start screen sharing window. Here we are. I presented this to the British Embassy.
Okay, I see it.
I presented it to the British Embassy GTK conference that happened a few days ago, and I call it Black Swans, White Swans, and the Purple Transition. So I'm going to try and put it into presentation mode, and tell me if you can actually see it. Can you still see it?
Right now I do. Okay, yeah, I see the seconds. It says summary.
So
okay,
I'm going to rocket through this real quick. The presentation has been given to you. You can have it and send it off to anyone who wants it. So
it's in the link is in the comments below.
Yep. Mapping the green transition. Calculations around the 4 buffer sizes, which is the real controversy at the moment. Quantity of metals needed. Okay, you've seen all that. Make batteries out of something other than lithium-ion chemistry. It's not rocket science, hey. It's really not.
Iron phosphate.
Yeah, that's right. So LFP is actually part of my calculations at the moment. So anyway, so the commodities industry has been misunderstood. So I present liquid fuel fission, and this is the Copenhagen study, and then ammonia-fueled ICE. I coined the term the purple transition, because the green transition's dead. Well, it's not dead, but it's probably not going to go the way they think, and so we're probably going to do other things instead. And so let me just, you've seen all this in other podcasts, so I won't actually sort of, they're the 4 buffers.
Yeah.
And this is the metals needed. That's not going to work, etc., etc. All right. Make batteries out of something else. So this is the theoretical potential of each battery chemistry. Right. So you've got lithium in the bottom left-hand corner, which means and then you got all the way up. The top right is the best. And so you've got sodium, and then you've got fluoride. The fluoride in your toothpaste turns out to be a very efficient system. Then you've got things like zinc and sodium, like metal air batteries. So all of these things can be found in our waste. So this is actually a circular economy action, not rocket science. Right, so that brings us to thorium. Now, I think you've already seen this section already. This is actually a report from Oakland Ridge Nuclear Laboratory, 1972, that said this works. So the system, just quickly, you have thorium in a salt form, that's fuel. You put it in the reactor and you bombard it with neutrons from a nuclear source or a proton lamp. And some of that thorium then is excited to a different isotope state. Like it goes through several stages and it gets to uranium-233. It then heats up. The salt liquefies and it starts moving around the reactor in a circuit. Once it's got that, it doesn't need the nuclear source anymore, and so it's generating heat. And so that heat is then transferred to another circuit, another salt information. Heat is transferred. That heat is then used to turn water into steam, turn a turbine, and generate electricity. Now, there's 2 fail-safes. One is the thorium reaction. If it gets to a certain temperature, it starts to cascade and collapse, right? So it can't melt down, but it can collapse, as in it just stops. And the other one is if we hit this freeze plug, it's got this freeze plug, and if it gets too hot, that can melt, and the fuel can drain out of the reactor and put into dump tanks and be managed that way. So there's not 1, but 2 fail-safes. So with this technology, we can't really have a Fukushima or a Chernobyl. So here is the Oak Ridge molten salt reactor, 1969, 6,000 hours of power generation without a problem. It started with uranium salt, then it looked at thorium salt. This is the Chinese system. Now, when I was in China, I was actually told by a Chinese official that this is real, and it's now commercially selling power as of 2022. And you don't see this anywhere in the Western media, but that's actually a Japanese a newspaper that actually sort of put it out. So this is the actual cycle of the 2, like the footprint, to show that they are different. So we're going to generate 10,000 gigawatt hours of electrical power over 1 year. To do that, mine 123 million tons of uranium ore and turn it into 32.9 tons of uranium oxide fuel, 96% of which is waste. Right, so now we're going to do the same thing with thorium. Now we're starting with 280 tons of thorium monazite sand. So already we've shrunk the system remarkably. And we make 1.34 tons of thorium fluoride salt, and we generate the power.
Same amount.
Same amount. Now, between 1 and 5% is still radioactive, as in it hasn't been burned up in the reactions, right? And so this is the stuff you've got to store. It's about 50.
It's much, much less.
50 to 60 kilograms, and you store it for 300 years, not for 100,000.
Wow.
Right. So it is what's interesting is you can run with uranium salt mix with some SNF, but it also you can put spent nuclear fuel into the thorium system in small amounts, and you can process it that way. So all that nuclear stockpile that's down the bottom, that's actually fuel.
Oh, so we in Ontario have a major problem with a huge amount of nuclear waste. So would we be able to reprocess some of that nuclear waste for these molten salt reactors?
Yes. Over time, and depending on what the actual system. Right. So this is a list of this list needs to be updated, but there are groups of actually this is what they're doing. Lots of groups all around the world, and they're all deadly serious. And they pass through feasibility studies. And we don't know which one will work, but I went to physically see Copenhagen. So there's the third page. Rolls-Royce, look at that. They're claiming they haven't been doing it, but actually they have. Right. Wow. So this is a picture of me wearing a tie for the first time in 25 years. And I happen to be standing in front of a test rig of a full-sized thorium nuclear reactor. Now, this is it's the equivalent of a 20-foot container. It's a test rig. It tests the water circuit, but the rig, the nuclear reactor behind me is full size. It's a sphere. That's an onion configuration, and that's to my right is Thomas Jan Pedersen. Right. So each commercial reactor is planned to produce 100 megawatts of thermal heat or 40 megawatts of electricity. And each one is the size of a 40-foot shipping container with a full system together. And they're going to be made in the factory at a rate of 1 a day. They'll come online in 2028. They plan to sell electricity at 2 cents a kilowatt, where 1 gram of thorium or uranium produces 24 megawatt hours of thermal energy. Put that in context. They're modular, so you can put lots of these things together. Let's say you want a plant producing 10 gigawatts of electricity, so you've got a whole lot of them stacked together. You need 800 kilograms of thorium-232 metal each year in salt form. So the full test of the whole system, because this is in Copenhagen, they've got all these laws and hoops they've got to jump through to allow this to happen. So it's really slow. Late 2025 is actually when they're actually going to actually generate electricity for the full site for the first time. But I actually walked through the factory, and they had about 20, maybe 30 test rigs, each one testing one component. And one of them was like a molten salt that was kept molten with, say, like electric heating, and it had been circulating around the system for more than a year. And so that's sort of the tests they're doing. And so I saw the water cycle working, and I saw the salt working, and so all the radioactive tests have actually been done on another site, and they will actually assemble them. So they plan to be selling these in 2028.
I have a question. I was wondering if they're using a pump in the molten salt reactor, or if they're just using convection.
They wouldn't tell me.
Oh, they wouldn't tell you. Okay.
It's commercial secret, which is fair enough.
Oh, right. Yeah. Well, I was like easy way to tell if it was noisy or if it wasn't.
It wasn't noisy.
It wasn't noisy. So that would be convection, and I think that's a more reliable way of doing it, anyways.
Yeah. So these. Now I looked inside these things, the components look fairly simple.
Mhm.
And once you've got the components assembled, I don't think it's a big deal to actually assemble one of these a day if you've got a properly set up factory. So I reckon they can do it.
Mhm.
And then it comes to ammonia. Right.
Oh, okay.
I'm actually heading towards the purple transition.
Mhm.
So ammonia is Toyota, who've also been looking at my work, but all these groups around the world are looking at my work, but they won't acknowledge my existence. But I know they're using it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Toyota has actually released a concept of an ammonia engine, and what they're basically saying is electric vehicles won't work because of the resource problem and the infrastructure problem.
Mhm.
They also wanted to get out from under Chinese influence. And that was actually the real decision for them. They didn't want to be tied to the Chinese. And so they've developed a way of actually having an ammonia engine in a passenger car. Now, I have two questions for this. One, they claim they're actually managing the exhaust. So the exhaust gases are not toxic, like a catalytic conversion system, but I don't know how they're doing that. So I want to understand more of that. And the other pertinent question is, can we actually generate electricity? Can we actually make ammonia from seawater?
Oh.
So the third part of the the purple transition is metal powder. So you can look at this if you want. So the idea is they take iron oxide or iron powder and they burn it,
Mhm.
and it oxidizes, and that releases a lot of heat. Where 500 kilograms of iron powder produces 1 megawatt hour of heat. Now the burn temperature is around 2,300 degrees Celsius. But their systems they're suggesting like 1,800 degrees in practice is not a problem. So we've got to replace coal. And so they also think these guys think in terms of they're going to produce replace power generation as well. And so a lot of their thinking is a little conventional, but they're also well advanced. And so this is the sort of thing that they're sort of looking at. So iron powder is actually sort of cycle efficiency is right up there with everything else. Sorry.
This kind of reminds me of the salvage economy, because we're going to have all these skyscrapers standing around with lots of steel in them, and they could be put down into powder and then used for these kinds of reactors.
So there's a logistical thing there, but yeah, sure.
Mm-hmm.
This is all in the presentation. People can go through if they like. So go through. You've seen this slide before, but we've misunderstood the commodities sector. When we're looking at when we talk about energy, it's really energy, but also what raw material it was sourced from, like a mineral, whether it's coal, oil, or gas, or now whatever mining mineral, whatever it is. Then there's the technology to extract and use it, and then there's the economics, and all of these are going to come from the planetary environment. This is how we really are, and we just haven't really acknowledged that. And so, but our relationship with all is changing. Right, now let's move into new territory.
Mm-hmm.
This is the purple transition. So we've got two wings. Application, like what do we use the technology for? And then how do we generate the energy to get there? But it's the application, it's the push-pull thing. Is it push or is it pull? It's both. But anyway, we want transport, which at the moment is ICE, petroleum, electricity, and manufacture. Now, manufacture at the moment relies heavily on heat, coal in particular, and I've yet to hear anyone address that at all. So we've got coal, gas, and oil, and nuclear. Petroleum's going, phase it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We've got all this stuff to actually generate electrical power. We want solar and wind, apparently, to be the primary energy system to overtake fossil fuels. That's the projection.
Mm-hmm.
We've got these other things like electric vehicles, biofuels, hydrogen fuel cells. Electric vehicles are not going to work in their current form because there's two problems here. One is the batteries, making the batteries, but the other is to manufacture the infrastructure associated with the charging of those batteries for 1.4 billion vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
That is actually the showstopper, because the practicalities of that and also the natural resources for that are actually more than the electric vehicles themselves. Biofuels cannot actually supply. There's a limited supply of biomass. The planet can't do that, so that's got to go. Hydrogen has limitations of the storage and transport of so much hydrogen. You can do it on a small scale, but trying to do it at a large scale, I think the wheels fall off. And so that's looking like that's impractical. So you got the idea. The technology works for all of these things on a small scale. It's when you try and scale it up to be available for 8 billion people that things become difficult. Right. So solar and wind, the buffer to manage the intermittency is the problem. And we don't have the technology to store such a large amount of power for such a long period of time. Even at the 6-hour level, which is what conventional thinking believes. Of course, you're never going to balance the difference between summer and winter, the solar with that. But but anyway, so I believe solar and wind will fail. So all these others like hydro, geothermal, biowaste, and wave all work, but they can't really expand because there's geographical limitations about where you can put them.
Yeah.
So each one of them have their problems. That brings us to nuclear. So I now said conventional uranium light water reactors. I did a simulation, and I found that they can't expand fast enough to be useful. It takes too long. Even if they only took 5 years to build, and we brought on a net 25 new reactors every year, it would still not work.
Yeah, and also, even if we did, we don't have the uranium reserves.
Yeah, and so
we'd only have 10 years left.
We can go off and find more. But the more serious problem is, well, to be useful, can we expand? No. Are we in a position to manage such a large amount of waste? No. Right. So there are problems there. And then there is, well, coal is for heat, if manufacture, and it's really a heat economy, not an electricity economy. We need heat for manufacture and electricity.
Yeah.
So we've got ICE ammonia. 2 questions. Can you manage the exhaust gas, and can we produce it out of seawater? Remains to be seen, but so far looks okay. But if you've got heat, well, maybe you can. Then we've got the liquid fuel fission, thorium molten salt concept. So far that's standing up, but I can see some problems of expansion. Like that's not going to be the magic solution, but it's going to be a solution. But it does deliver the heat, but the heat is not good enough. And so I think that might become a very important energy source. So it's now going to look like this. This is what we're now. So on one side we've got ICE ammonia, the other side we've got liquid thorium. And the third piece of technology is combustion of iron oxide powder to produce temperatures, and that can actually supply and manufacture. And I call this the purple transition.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. So that's the presentation. So I wanted to quickly, while you're still here, share a little bit about the transition I was working on.
I'll turn my camera off. I'm actually eating dinner, so I got to turn. My camera
that's fine. Here, so it's somewhat different because I decided to start with the family level, like what can provide for a family, and so if you have the land to grow your own food and firewood, then you could do your heating with the firewood, and then you just have the solar panels for basic LED lighting, like a smartphone, a laptop, that kind of thing. And then for the community level, it would be basically scaling that up, but you could also have horses or ox for transportation, because you wouldn't be able to do that on a family level, since each horse or ox needs as much land as a human. But within a community of 50 to 60, which is the optimal for any human community, you'd be able to spare a hectare or two for a transportation animal. And then for the village level, it's actually big enough that if they all get their poop together, they can create enough biogas to power one vehicle, one bio-CNG, compressed natural gas vehicle, for, I think it was like 180 kilometers. Anyways, enough for traveling to, say, a community point, like to the nearby city for resupply and waste disposal. As well, they could use the biogas CNG for things like blacksmithing, lime, or any of the other things that we would traditionally use charcoal for, because there's absolutely no way of growing enough charcoal, because it's a 10-to-1 ratio. You would need to burn hundreds of hectares of wood in order to do anything useful with it. So the biogas allows you to reach those temperatures without actually burning any extra thing. Here I had lime production. So blacksmith is 1 to 3 cubic meters of bio CNG, metal casting 2 to 5, glass making 2 to 6, wood chipper 2 to 6, ceramic kiln 2 to 5, lime production 4 to 8, and the van uses 32 cubic meters for a full tank. And then so from 360 people, the bio CNG they could produce per week is 40 or something cubic meters. So it's enough to do that basic stuff at the local level. And then at the neighborhood level, they'd be able to like store, the bio CNG for like refueling and things like that, and have a farmer's market going. And then at the city level, like what you were thinking of, so this would be 55,000 people. Then you would have at the city level, you would have a thorium reactor for industry and making the solar panels and things like that. And then at the the county level, it would just kind of I haven't really gotten to the other layers, but yeah, I was just thinking, Simon, if that would help with what you're thinking.
It doesn't look good. I would say from what I look at so far, the county level is going to be the most important.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
You'll have a network of towns. That's
yeah.
Going to be where it's at.
Yeah, so that's going to be several. So what I got in the county, so there would be county radio. So I talked to my county council on a regular basis, and recently, I was telling them about the importance of having a county radio network, and now they're planning a $5 million radio booster station, and so that would provide at least radio connectivity for our richest municipality of Blue Mountains, because they got a lot of tourism and stuff, and so they would be able to use the booster station for both one-on-one communications for coordinating groups all over the municipality, as well as having the FM radio station to tell the residents, what's going on in the municipality. And then you could network these FM radio stations in order to allow that to happen. So, for a county radio, it would be 10 to 20 kilowatts, but they're doing a municipal radio, which is 1 to 5 kilowatts right now. And then there would also be the education, which would be colleges, universities, and healthcare, and things like that. Leon?
Yeah, a question for Simon. Can you hear me?
I can.
Mm-hmm. I think a big factor now is going to be time.
Yeah.
Reference to getting all this honing down on what exactly is the right path regards to the future. Have we got enough time based on the information we know reference to fossil fuels, diminishing oil, and the resource and money that's being injected in the wrong way forward? Do we have enough time? That's my first question. Second question is regards to the Venus project. Is it being designed for a kind of post-capitalist society which has already disintegrated, opposed to a mitigation to inject into the ill society, if you get my drift?
Right. Now, for a start, my meeting's not in 3 minutes. It's actually in 33 minutes. It's at 5:30, not 5. It's been delayed, so we can stay on for longer.
Oh, cool.
Right. So time is a problem. Now, my answers to that, and this has actually become from a number of conversations with people, and this is brutal. So many people have pushed back, and so many people have been quite rude. How many people have you tried to discuss with these basic problems, and not only will they not engage, but they'll take time to actually destroy what you're trying to do? Right. And so instead of actually trying to develop a solution for everyone, I'm now thinking in terms of, I would much rather be helping people like Doon, or people who are already doing stuff, people who are like-minded people who got, or at least can have a conversation.
Yeah.
Right. So when I say, do we have time? Well, it depends on time for what. Are we going to actually build a system for 8 billion people, or are we going to build a system for, say, 40 or 50 communities across the planet that might have an extended network of, say, 100 million people? Right. Second, we don't know which one of these systems will work because we haven't done it yet. We like to think we do, but everyone that's tried stuff, it's shown to have shortfalls. So what has to happen is all solutions need to hit the ground running in pilot scale. And we need to have a go and learn, fuck about and find out in engineering terms. Right? So we need to go for it. And then, here's the important part, we need to tell each other how it's going. So instead of saying, I will now rule the world, I've got the solution, the rest of you bunnies are going to be in my kingdom where I'm king, or you're going to starve to it. No. Right. So we're decentralizing. And so we're going to see a massive diversity of solutions on the ground, lots and lots and lots of communities, each one trying their own thing. And we have to have like some kind of communication network between them all. What works, what doesn't, exchange of information, and if possible, exchange of resources. Now, what I'm planning is a gateway. I call it a gateway city, where I'm going to demonstrate a series of technologies. I'm in a place that's the desert, so it's going to be very hard to be self-sufficient, but it's going to make certain things possible, which then can be telescoped all over the world. Like I've been to Doon's community in northern New South Wales, and it's remarkable. Imagine, if you will, is what would happen if Doon actually had one of these thorium reactors arrive on a truck, and now he had all of a sudden 40 megawatts of electricity to play with.
Yeah, that would be enough to. Would it be enough to make some solar panels?
So, no, I don't think we want one yet.
Well, the most renewable power source is students in a hamster wheel. So if you need power, that's all you need. Just make them run. Promise will sign their paperwork, and they'll run, you bastard. So each of these groups are going to have to sort of develop, and they'll make something possible. It's going to be like the Wild Wild West, but in innovation terms. But that innovation is not going to be in universities anymore. At the moment, I've come to the point where that map that I showed you, the purple transition, that will be a massive surprise to all the research groups I'm part of. Because there's adverse attitude where they don't want to talk about anything unusual or controversial or something that actually might be negative, which means they are completely blindsided and have a pants down moment when reality intrudes. Oh, right. So everyone who actually has been shouting lithium batteries at me for the last 5 years have been wasting their time and mine. That's the problem. Right. And so innovation, breakthrough innovation is not coming out of our institution. It's coming from somewhere else. Right? Private sector can't do it, but somehow private sector is involved. Academia can't do it, but somehow they're involved. Government certainly can't do it, but somehow they're involved. It's like an entity that there's not. And what I'm actually forming is I'm trailblazing into an area where no one is there at the moment. But this is not the first time this has happened. I'm not the first to have this basic idea. Right. So innovation is going to land in each of these. Like Andrew, if you're successful in making your community, you'll have a group of people and they'll be living. What do? If they're established and stable, but lots of people aren't, you have a responsibility, not a responsibility, but an opportunity to actually do something cool to change the world. Because you can do it and they can't. Every single community around the world will be in that position. Stability can only happen if you've got enough food to eat, or if you've got enough energy, or enough electricity, or you're not at war with your neighbors over resources. Right. All this thing we call education. Well, how do we maintain that?
Yeah. Oh, well, I have a few points. Well, one of them, you were talking about that network of communities all over the globe, and if the internet goes down, at least the regular internet for whatever reason, then there's HF radio or shortwave radio, and at the country level it would be 50 to 250 kilowatts would be suffice for public broadcast for a country, and for a province it would be 20 to 100 kilowatts. But I would imagine that if it's that range, you would be able to contact all over the globe these different communities if you had a high power shortwave radio transmission.
I'm planning to have a big satellite link, a big satellite link. And if I can become mates with Elon, I'd like my own personal satellite, and I can be a real wanker.
Yeah. Oh, well, other people would have to have them too, then.
Well,
yeah. And then I did watch this. You know how Klaus Schwab has been talking about the cyber hackers, taking everything down, and I watched a movie about the from Netflix about the cyber hack, and in it even the satellites go down. And only the shortwave radio guys managed to maintain communication because that's local, and they had it in their Faraday cage bunkers. Yeah, because a high altitude burst or whatever would take all that out.
There's a lot of science fiction that's useful. The story of the postman. Whoever wrote the postman, I can't remember the other, but it was the idea of a postal service was how communities can communicate with each other and then give aid if they needed it. But then when you read the book itself, the main character comes across a broken down vehicle that's crashed, but the owner, the driver, was dead but had a postman's jacket on. And he had some letters, and one of the letters, when you open them all up, was communication to one of the communities. Was where they were trying to get some agreement. You show us this, we'll show you that. We've got this, you've got that. So it could be something like that. Like where someone will actually carry a written dispatch, and they'll travel a long way to do it. For the cities connecting each other, I was thinking the best thing would be a traditional railway. It costs 1/10 as much as an asphalt road per kilometer, and requires much less energy to get it going. So it could work, anyways, on the local level, like as a reboot, as part of the reboot. Anyhow, and in terms of the food production, I've been looking heavily into that for decades, and so the best thing is the food forests. And so in your community of that you're planning on setting up, it would make sense to have that as the base plan of before you start doing any changes to the actual taking the tops off mountains and things like that. Because the thing is, the tops of mountains can be a very good source of water because for instance, like the pyramids and basically like trees, what they do is they change the atmosphere, they change the pressure, and they create a low pressure area where like the clouds accumulate on top of it, and then the water comes down. So you do want to have tall mountains, but you also want swales to catch the water when it falls, and then you want plants that will absorb that water. And biotic pump, as Ivor was saying. Ivor, did you want to add to that? Or
But yeah, so I would recommend getting permaculturists like Jeff Lawton or someone else to come in there and have them part of that process, because food is so essential. You want to create a permaculture system that will provide you food on a regular basis, so that you don't have to worry about tilling and all those kinds of things. And you can focus on the other aspects of your community, like the minerals and those other things.
Yeah, the biotic pump. When I lived in Guatemala, there was an old Mayan guy, and this old Mayan guy said, "Oh, it's too bad that they're cutting down all the trees, because the trees call the water." And I remember sort of laughing about it, like, "Oh, right, the trees call the water." But as it turns out, they've done a lot of research, and what actually happens is there's almost like a little microclimate. All those trees send up droplets, and those droplets attract clouds, and the clouds just sort of sit on the top of a hill or a mountain and drop their load of water coming in from the ocean. They say it can go up to 200 miles from the ocean, and it's a regular thing. I watch it every day in the summer. I live on a little island in Maine, and we see thunderclouds. They don't hit here. They hit up 100. They don't hit on the island. They hit 100 miles inland, and they drop their load of water every single day on forested places. So I think it's really interesting that the biotic pump works. And if you cut down too many trees, it quits working. That's what happened to the Middle East.
Before we do anything in anger, everything is going to be studied to death and discussed to death by literally hundreds of people who are qualified. I'll be the CEO of this operation, which means the work won't be done by me, it'll be done by people I employ. So we'll get the relevant people together, and we're going to do it, and we will understand the watershed, both above the ground and below the ground. Every 20 years, they have these massive floods that come through the area and wash away all the topsoil, which is why the area is the way it is.
Yeah.
So we're going to try and catch that water so it doesn't wash everything away and it becomes a long-term resource.
Yeah.
But everything will be integrated together into one system, not just the permaculture, not just the biosystems and greening the desert, but also the city that we want to live, which we will need water and we will need things and food and resources, and the industrial systems that we want to put on the ground as well have to be all integrated together into one balanced system. And then once we actually sort of understand what we're doing, then we start digging things up. To reinvent agriculture, right, here's the plan. We're going to get everyone around the table. So we're actually looking at this site. We've got all the information we've collected from the geological surveys and the marine surveys. We're on a pristine coast and we need to know what's in front of us. We will have around the table people who do organic agriculture of every stripe, from regenerative agriculture all the way to the conventional or organics. There's now lots of different subcategories all around the table. Around the same table is going to be practitioners of existing horticultural science. That, yes, we're trying to phase it out, but there's an enormous amount of science that's been done and knowledge that's been assembled together. Everyone's around the table and says, right, the metrics are this. This is the environment we're working with, and this is the information associated with it. You have 60 millimeters of water a year, right? And we're going to try and not interact with that. We have to avoid the 20-year cycle of floods. You're not allowed to use industrial petrochemical fertilizers, herbicides, or pesticides. We need to build life systems and soil systems, and we're not allowed to use GMOs either. We want to get to the point where we can produce as close to self-sufficiency for our community as possible, and we want to be growing hemp and bamboo products as well. We also want to be doing aquaculture, both marine aquaculture and conventional aquaculture. Go. And then we have a discussion back and forth, and no one will have the answer. And the outcome that will be a combination of everyone around the table, and it will be a genuine first. We will see it for the first time. And whatever site we go to, we have to do this.
This guy, Daniel Sandweiss, might be useful to you because he's been studying the interaction of the El Nino and the water cycle. And he said, yeah, there are periodic, like you say, every 20 years or something, there are these floods. Well, a lot of them correspond with the El Nino cycle, and also the rise and fall of different small cultures have all gone with the El Nino cycle, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah. And I wanted to say, yeah, the main thing to avoid the washing away the topsoil is establishing permaculture crops, because their roots will hold the soil together and prevent it from washing away. And bamboo is a very water intensive crop, but I know ice cream bean is the fastest growing drought tolerant tree that I'm aware of. And well, it's as the name suggests, it's very delicious.
So yeah,
And it's a South America native.
So if we wind up on a different site, we'll be looking at bamboo, but certainly hemp, where we're looking at, because it doesn't need very much water.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So all of those things will be sort of looked at, but it has to be balanced off against everything else. Now, there's a whole lot of archaeological sites in the area that we're looking at, which is complicating the hell out of where I'm going to put my city, because where I've got it now is on the only flat piece of land. I can actually share a picture of the map that I've got at the moment.
Okay, sure.
So, taking a while to load, was apparently it's large.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So, where are you? Okay, sharing.
Okay, I'll unshare mine.
Right, that's what we're looking at.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Now, it's a very hilly area. Around the coastline, we've got cliffs about 50 meters tall, and then we're sort of going up. This is probably sitting about 300 meters above sea level, and 200 meters above sea level, something like that.
Okay.
And we've got, but all of these industrial sites here, we're going to have to move them probably to over the road. Now, over the road, we've got lots of hilly mountainous terrain, which we're going to have to now terrace. And I'm not afraid of terracing, because in a drill and blast operation in a mine site, that's what we do. We actually move a lot of earth and we terraform the whole place. And it turns out lots of cultures in the past have terraformed the place they put the city on, and that's why we see such long and old ruins. So anyway, that's, I'm sure you get the point. So
wow. Well, it's an ambitious project for sure.
Go hard, go large, or go home.
Yeah, that's true. It's true. Yeah,
I think if you can get the right people into the mix, and like you described it, an innovation hub, there's absolutely no reason why you can't get an outcome and a movement towards.
Yeah, well, most of what I need to do has already been done. I just need to put the pieces together. Most of what I need to do to be successful, I don't have to develop anything. I just have to put it on the ground and connect it together. And so what then happens from that foundation is the innovation. But I'm actually highly confident of being successful if I can get the capital together, because it's already there.
Are you concerned about reference to the capital, that you're going to be looking for capital? You're looking for investors that are essentially looking to get a return on their investment, right?
Yeah, to a point. There are lots of investors. There's a lot of money out there looking to land. Like the Saudis spent $50 billion building one of their concept cities. These people throw around trillions of dollars like it's nothing, right? So this is not a lot of money. We just need to get the right people. What we want is what we call legacy investors, people who want their family name associated with developing the next generation of human civilization. And whatever we do here, it will take time, but there are revenue streams coming off this thing. So if I may share, can you see the screen?
Yeah, we can see it. Viability of Venus evolution.
Right. So the idea, there's three things that actually are generating revenue. First, there's the intellectual property hub. So there's a lot of intellectual property coming out which can be commercialized. I want to be attracting innovators from all over the world where they don't get screwed in the commercialization process. And because I used to be an inventor, I know how to do that. It involves less money for the investor. Second is engineering production of unusual products. Like if we recycle rubber tires, then get carbon black, and we make graphene products. Now we can start selling graphene products. Then there is the unorthodox sourcing of commodities, and that's all the stuff I'm still looking at the moment. So you've got 3 streams of saleable products which will generate revenue. The first set of costs to actually take that revenue down is the operational costs of running the city and associated industrial sites, and with what's left can be sent as royalty streams back to investors. And that's how I'll be talking to money. At the moment, we need donations. Donations handed into the Venus Project to get us going. And once going, I'm going to suit up and go and catch a couple of big fish.
Yeah, I was thinking that a good source of donations would be those prepper millionaires and billionaires, like Mark Zuckerberg was recently making that bunker in Hawaii. That was in the news. And, there's lots and lots of millionaires and 100 millionaires that are doing that. And so, I mean, if you had like a little call center to call the Forbes list or whatever and ask them if they're interested, I think some of them would be.
Yeah, that's another stream. See, there's lots of ways to get money, right? What we want is get money in with the strings that are attached to that money are not going to interrupt the design of the city. Right, right, and so one of the things could be, for example, donate 100 million US dollars to our cause, and you can have one of the apartments in the cities, one of the homesteads in the city, and you've got a community around you, and that's your plan.
Yeah,
for you and your family.
Yeah. I'm thinking a lot of them might be interested in because like some of them are just so rich they don't know what to do with their money.
Yeah.
And so if you offer them either an apartment or a lot or whatever, then they would be willing to do that with your no strings attached or very few strings attached, because they're also doing other projects in other places, and this would be just a backup for them, and they could just give you 100 million or whatever.
There is a shitload of money that is circling looking for a place to land, knowing that the system is done. And the whole Western world's going down. There's going to be a divorce of all things East and all things West. Europe is in deeper shit than usual. America does have the potential to reinvent itself. Europe is making sure it doesn't. There's a lot of money looking for a place to land. Australia and Canada are both looking more stupid than usual.
Oh yeah, it's true. Oh, I had a few questions left from people. From the PQL group. How do we help the general public overcome energy blindness?
That's an interesting question. I don't know the answer to that question because, as it turns out, most people like their energy blindness.
Yeah.
So
it's a comforting delusion.
So, pain is a great teacher. It could be the people. We're seeing it now. Electricity prices are going through the roof here in Europe. I believe it's a direct consequence of geopolitical monkey business. And there's a lot of political forcing to make green transition happen without thinking through what's needed for that. Right? So there are problems with that. And people say, why is that? So they're thinking about it for the first time. Instead of trying to tell people the bleeding obvious, which has been happening for the last 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, for some people, find a group of like-minded people, go and create something successful, and as things get difficult, people will observe their success. Why is that then? And then they'll get it. Just try not to laugh when it happens.
And
basically, we're in collapse. So this civilization's going down, and as you say, Simon, it's too late. What you're trying to do is still utilize the technologies that we've created from, the growth of this civilization. I don't think that we're going to make anything like what's required for 8 billion people. So the population of the Earth is just too great for what we've done, and I don't know what we can do other than to collapse back to small groups that are small enough to not want to fight one another, below Dunbar's number. And it's pretty simple to grow food if you're in the right place with the right kind of climate, and to survive in a small group. And maybe that small group's going to be attacked by another group, and we're not going to survive either. But that's about as best that we're going to be able to do in the future, I believe, and we're going to have to grow from nothing.
So I've got an idea for you. I recently watched the Foundation TV series on Apple, which, I don't know, I just want to read the book again. The book did it so much better. Harry Seldon was the mathematician in that book who kicked off the whole thing. And he had the basic idea of the empire was about to come apart at the seams and was going to go into a dark age 30,000 years long. What he suggested was forming what was the foundation, which is like a colony of intellectuals far away from everyone else. And that would set off a chain reaction that would make that dark age only last 1,000 years instead of 30,000.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And maybe that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
There'll be the future's here, but it's unequal. It's not distributed equally. There'll be parts of the world which might be okay, and parts of the world definitely won't be okay. But the parts that are okay, if they could actually maintain our existing capability somehow, and then that can be transferred later when everyone else has a clue.
And dude, I wanted to address your point. So basically, you were saying if we were a small community and then someone else might invade. So I think, I was thinking about that too. And the best thing I found is to help kind of the area transition. And so if you could go to your local county council, your local municipal council, and regularly attend so they know who you are, because they have the boots on the ground, they've got the batons or the guns or whatever. They're going to be doing their best to maintain order through this transition. And if you help them see that there is a viable way to do that, even if it's just that select group of counselors and their henchmen, then you're going to have a much higher chance of survival for your little group, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's probably true. But the way I see it is that if people observe what's going on and people observe that there are certain groups that are looking like they're doing things that allow them to survive, then rather than come in and knock them off, that they'll try and emulate the same kind of thing. So if you're in an area where there's enough natural resources, including water, soil, and climate, and you'll be able to grow food in your own little way, and somewhere 10 kilometres away there'll be another group that are doing the same thing. So and somehow it's going to emerge from that somewhere.
I'm kind of connecting with the local Grange, and the Grange is kind of it's kind of a more abundant institution, but the local Grange, there were a whole bunch of people who were sort of hippie back to the landers who had a little group, and their place, the snow mushed the roof down, so it's gone. So they all joined the East Madison Grange, and the Grange was patrons of husbandry. They were kind of like a little group that was kind of radical in their day, the free silver movement and all the William Jennings Bryan thing, and they are kind of on the upswing again, and there are a lot of sort of interesting young people actually that are involved with it. So I figured just sort of encourage them, and we'll try to get it going. And we also have a small radio station, which is just 2-3 watts right now, but we may be going to 100 watts. And we are going to have a kind of we call it an extravaganza, where we have music, different things, and art and things happening. And we're going to do it at the East Madison Grange. So it's kind of like we're encouraging this little group to get together and make a community again of small farmers and people like us. So I don't know. It's a sort of a much simpler thing than everything else, but it seems to be working.
I think Simon touched on it well, didn't he, earlier, in regards to communication and collaboration, right? And helping other people.
Yeah, exactly.
I was just wondering if you guys had any last questions for Simon, because he's got to go in 2 minutes.
I do have a little a question. What about the people who live actually in South Peru? I know they've been in that part of Peru. I know they had I have a coin that's at South Peru, 8 reales. It comes from that area, and there have been movements there for many, many years. Peru split up. This was in 1830s, 1840s. So I'm just curious about how are you going to deal with the people who are actually there, the Peruvianos?
The land we're looking at is deserted. It's privately owned, and we're talking to the owners, right? Most people are in a town or a city called Arequipa and Quilca, and they're a couple of 100 kilometers away. For a couple of 100 kilometers in every direction, right, there is desert with no people living there because there's no water and there's no facilities and there's no nothing.
Oh, okay. It's not one of those fertile valleys.
Nope.
Okay.
Okay.
We don't want to be in competition with someone else's resources.
Mm-hmm.
Half the country doesn't have enough drinking water or access to sewage sanitation. And we might be able to help them with that, but we can't arrive and say, right, we're going to take those resources now because we've got the money. And they'll say, oh, you're just another gringo here to save the world. But really, you're just going to exploit us. I want to land in an area where no one else has actually developed yet. And so if people come to us, they come to us because of what we've actually developed, and they'll help us.
Yeah, that sounds like a good plan. Yeah, and 100 kilometers, that's far enough away, and especially if you got those mountains that you probably won't have too many people walking over there post-collapse.
We are planning to have a security presence there. I'm studying documents like the United States Constitution in particular. There's also another like the Magna Carta and all that. But how do we actually evolve to the point where people on the ground had power? And we're thinking in terms of like, how do we band together as a community so we have resilience, genuine resilience on all fronts.
In that regard, I would recommend looking into the ICCPR and the ICESCR, which are international treaties which Peru has already signed, and they're very similar. They're kind of like the best of the American Constitution and the Magna Carta put together back in the 70s or whatever, post World War II. So Canada helped put them together.
There'll be people other than me to look at all that who are more qualified, and they will be discussing it for years. In the short term, we're going to be a private company with a job to do with a security ring in the desert, far away from everyone.
Yeah, sounds good.
So I'm going to disappear over the horizon with a group of like-minded people, and I will come back in 10 years, whenever it is time, with an entirely new proposition, and then we will do business.
Okay. Yeah. Well, don't get completely out of touch. We want to network those communities all across the globe.
Buena suerte con su proyecto en Peru.
I don't speak Spanish yet. No.
Okay, I'm just saying, good luck with your project in Peru.
Okay. Well, thank you. We had a lot of support. A lot of people are pushing back, and they're trying to sort of tell me that nah, that's not possible. Anyway, I got to go, guys. I got work to do.
Okay. See you.
Thank you.